Hello everyone, I'm Heather Herbe and I'm an elementary art teacher in Upper St. Clair, and I'm also a very good friend of Karen's, and I wanted to lead you guys today in a little bit of a tutorial for creating some art and for relaxing. The process that you are going to be going through is called Neurographic Art, and what it allows for is your feelings and even unconscious thoughts to travel and express themselves freely from your brain to your arm, to your hand, and to your paper. It's very relaxing. What we're going to be doing is mindful, it's meditative, and it also later on, after you create the art, allows you to process and transform your emotions that may have guided the line drawings that you complete. Before we get started, I just wanted to also say that when you start the drawing process, don't have any pre-existing line or shape or object in mind. You want to just focus on a specific thought or a feeling that you're thinking about, and just let that guide you through the process. Okay? All right, so now we're going to get started. You're going to need your sheet of watercolor paper, which is here, and then you're going to need an extra fine tip Sharpie. All right, so we're ready to go. There's really no rules other than that when you start, you want to start at the edge of your paper, and then as you move your hand around, you don't want to stop a line in the middle of your paper. So if you happen to go off the page, that's fine, and then just come back onto the page, but don't stop midstream and then pick up your pen. You just want it to, this is just going to be one continuous fluid motion. Sometimes what also might help is if you don't even really have to look at what you're drawing. You can actually even just close your eyes. So I'm just going to start, and I am going to think about, I know Karen was saying maybe having you guys think about your practice as therapists. So maybe I'm just going to think about my week with my kiddos in the art room, and just kind of how I feel about the art making process. You can't see me, but I'm going to kind of just close my eyes and just let go. And the thing is that, again, I'm not looking at my paper really. I'm just relaxing. Your lines can crisscross over one another. They can be close together. I'm just kind of thinking. It's a little bit tricky sometimes to give up control. I have my eyes closed, so it's feels a little bit funny, but I'm just kind of going with it. I can feel the edge of my paper with my hand. Okay, now I opened my eyes, and I can see here, I'll just connect that there. And I realized I didn't go to the edge of my page. I seemed to have been spending a lot of time kind of down in this area, and that's okay to have this if nothing got filled here. I probably would have kept going, but for time's sake, you obviously don't want to watch me go through this whole process, but I just want to kind of get you guys started. So imagine now that you're finished and this is what we have. So now what you're going to do, you have a couple options. The first is that you can, and I'm going to give Karen some circle tracers, but you can take a lid or another shape, and you can lay it over top of what you did to create another shape. And so I'm going to grab this circle here, and maybe because I don't have a lot of stuff up there, I'm going to trace around that. Okay, I'm back. I realized that I didn't have as many circle tracers on hand as I needed, so I went and I grabbed those. So like I said, you have, this is an option, but you don't have to do this, but you can, I'm tracing over this here. Traced over that. Your shapes can go off the paper too. Okay, and maybe I'll just do one more kind of in here. Okay, there we go. Now, obviously you can put more or less depending on how you like your design. And then what you're going to do is, and this part takes, this is sort of the meditative part as well, because now what you're going to do is in every spot where a line intersects with another line, what you're going to do is you're just going to smooth that connection. So I'm just see how I kind of made that a little bit smoother. And then here's another one. So again, I'm just going to and it's okay if some of your lines, if you want to make some of your lines a little and then you're just going to hunt around for all those spots where the lines intersect. You can see it's going to even start to look a little bit kind of like the neurons of our brain, hence neurographic art, as you start to add these, round out these intersecting lines. I'll do a few more, and then I'm going to move on to one other thing that you can do. So I'm just kind of relaxing as I Okay, let's do, I didn't get this right in here. I didn't get that right in there. Okay, but you will, I'm gonna stop here, but you would continue to just kind of work your way through all those intersecting lines, and just kind of relax as you're doing it. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to get, I have to smooth out all these little intersecting areas. Just kind of allow yourself to free your mind. Think about your practice. Think about how you're feeling. Just enjoy letting your mind kind of relax. Okay, so now after you, it's funny now I started doing this, I don't want to stop. Okay, there's my last little area for now. Okay, so now what you're gonna do is after you go through all these intersecting areas, you can now, within some of the shapes that you created, you can create other designs. And I'll show you what I mean by that. All right, so the first option that you can use to fill up some of the spaces is using circles. And so if I want to fill this shape right here, what you can do is you can draw different size circles. They can touch. And then what you can do is after you've drawn all the circles that you want to draw, and I kind of really fit mine in here, but if you would like to leave more space in between your circles, you can. And then after you draw your circles, you're going to take your Sharpie and you are just going to color in the negative space around the shapes. Now, do you have to do this? No. It's just an option to add more interest or to express yourself further. So, and then I'm just carefully filling in around these shapes. So that's one strategy that you can use. Another one, and I'll stop here because you don't need, you get the idea. You would fill in the back of this. Another one, I'm looking through my notes here. So you can do circles. You can do larger bubbles that kind of fill up more of the space. So you can draw them like, so for example, if I have, let's look at this shape right here. So what you can do is you can draw sort of ovals. And then fill up the remaining space with smaller bubbles if you want to. And then again, I will fill in the negative space around it. Okay. And sometimes what you might like to do is to think about, yeah, your balance of dark and light areas. So if you have like, I have two darker areas over here, maybe I want to leave this and kind of move over here. But as you start to work, just kind of study your piece, and there is no right or wrong. It's what looks good to you, what is appealing to you. As you're thinking about expressing yourself, you know, what do you feel like the piece is telling you to do? And kind of if you think back to your original thinking as you were making your lines, you can kind of build upon that. Again, I probably wouldn't have put two different things here, but I just want to show you all the different strategies. So you can do these circles, you can do sort of more elongated bubbles. You can do something called stacking the pancakes, which is kind of fun. And what you do is you find a shape, and then what you do is you're just going to draw these flat shapes that kind of look like pancakes. Fit a little one up there. Okay, and then again, you can fill up the remaining space between your pancakes with the black. I think I'm just gonna get rid of that one that I drew. And I'm just filling that up. While I'm at it, I think I'm just going to round out this little section right here. Okay, so there's that. That gives you, and you can see that has a different look than these do. Another thing you can do is you can do something more where you're creating like a petal shape. So for example, let's say I kind of have in this area, it's kind of curving up and around. So what I could do is I could start with like some curves, and then I can just kind of curve around. Depending on the shape, sometimes, you know, the shape will lend itself to one strategy or another. And again, after you do the petal shapes, then you can fill in the area behind. And I won't color this whole one in, but you get the idea. And it looks kind of cool. You can also do kind of in the same vein as when we did the circles. Instead of small circles, maybe you want to fill up your space with really large circles. Like here's one in here. Kind of circles and ovals. So you can do that. That's another option. And let me see if there's any, I think that's all of the different strategies. Circles, ovals, pancakes, curve your lines, different size circles. And there may be something that I didn't talk about that you might want to do to fill your space too. So again, you don't have to, you're not going to probably fill every shape. Maybe you want to choose some larger shapes and fill those and leave the other shapes alone. But it's totally up to you. Or you may just like, after you do all this, you may just like the cleanness of that and not want to add any of these other shapes as well. So I'm just showing you options, and then you can kind of decide as your artwork is evolving what you would like to do. For the final step, we're going to talk about color. All right, guys, the last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is adding color to your artwork. And the art medium that we're going to talk about today, these look kind of like crayons, but they're called payons. So they work like a crayon, but they're really cool because when you add water to them, you can blend them like paint. So I'm going to show you a couple different strategies you can use with them. And then if you would like to, you can go ahead and add color to elements or parts of your artwork. So I'm just gonna grab this. The other cool thing is they come in these little sleeves. So if you feel comfortable using the sleeve, that's fine. But if you want to take it out of the sleeve, you can too. And I'm just gonna show you. You can kind of shade them. I'm just gonna put a little bit of color down here. These sort of leaf shapes, petal shapes. So I didn't put a lot of color, but then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip my brush into the water and then just kind of brush it off a little bit. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add, now I'm just brushing it here, and you can see it's giving me a nice and if I don't want to, I just wiped my brush off if I want it to get lighter as it goes up. So that's one thing you can do, is you can kind of color in one spot and then kind of drag the color, and it allows you to go from dark to light. That's one thing you can do. So there's that. You can just get pure solid color. So for example, let's see. So I'm just coloring these in. And pressing with a fair amount of pressure, and then same thing. I'm just going to take my brush and it fills it in And here's the cool thing too. I have the yellow on the brush so I can get these tiny little spots with the yellow that's already on my brush. So you got that. You can also layer colors. So for example, let's say I wanted to do some red. I'm going to take my violet again. Doesn't look like much right now, but then I'm going to take my brush and then I'm just going to and there I have kind of like, and then here's the cool thing, kind of like what I did with the petals. I'm gonna rinse the color off my brush, dry it off a little bit, and then kind of go back, and it allows me to kind of, I can shade it a little bit. So it's like dark to light. Trying to think what else. But yeah, oh, last thing I want to show you is, this is kind of cool. You can take, let's say, you can just take your wet brush and dab it on the end of one of your pans, and then paper towels are wonderful because if I feel like, oh, it's a little bit too wet, I can just dab my brush on there, and now my brush is dried off. And if I don't dab it on there, it's just gonna get lighter and lighter, but if I want to darken it up, I can do that. So it's really, these are really nice because you can get little pops of color in smaller spaces. It's kind of, it's a little bit like watercolor paint, but it's not watercolor paint. And then if I wanted to darken that up, I'm just putting another layer on it, or correspondingly, if you wanted to, again, I'm just gonna dry my brush off, if you wanted to mix colors while it's still wet, I can blend, which kind of gives you a really cool effect too. And last but not least, if you wanted to fill in a larger area, the nice thing about the pans is that you don't have to put a lot down to get a lot of color. So I'm just going to color in here with this. There's another blue. There's two different blues. This one's kind of sliding out, so I'm going to take it. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is it reminded me as I was doing this. One thing if you want to see your line, like if I scribble like this, I'm still going to see those lines. So if you don't want to see that and you want to have more smooth, even color, you want to even out your coloring. You don't want to see, you want it to be more solid. And then I might just take this and kind of okay. Now that's all filled in. Then I'm just going to take my brush, same thing. After you wet your brush, You can also, if you think it's a little too wet, you can always just, again, dab it on your towel. And here we go. I am filling this entire shape with color. Oops, I went a little bit outside the line, but that's okay. I'm just going to slide this around. I've mostly been showing you guys techniques, but as far as adding color to your artwork, that's totally up to you. You may only want to put little pops of color. You may want to make it very colorful depending on how you interpret what you've done or how you feel about the whole process. And different colors mean different things to different people. So I know typically blues and greens and violets are seen as like the cool colors. Reds and yellows and oranges are more warm, but that doesn't mean that blue is necessarily like you feel blue because of blue. You could feel happy because of blue. Another thing you could do too is if you wanted to go back over, like let's say when this is dry, it's pretty dry right now. If I wanted to go back over and kind of play around with adding a little bit more color, I can do that too. Okay, so I hope you guys have so much fun. I hope that you are able to relax, and I hope that you really enjoy this process in trying out this art making method, and also trying out this new art medium called Pam. Enjoy!